Hello again, and what is hip? And a happy new year to you all. I hope you all had a wonderful holiday season. I wanted to start out 2023 with a video talking about how to collect and how I collect in today's video game market for the year 2022 and the now 2023, because I know for a lot of new collectors and even for experienced collectors, it's a lot to take in, especially in today's market when prices have skyrocketed on retro video games, and it could be a lot to handle. So let's get right into it. So I was lucky to start collecting on the cusp, right before the video game craze happened. So prices were still affordable. There were still some expensive games, and prices were starting to increase at that point, but not so much. So, back then, if you were interested in like the Sega Saturn or the TurboGrafx or a system such as that, you could do that. Yes, they were more expensive than other consoles back then, but they were still within the realm of affordability. So you had a lot more choice on a budget. Nowadays, those systems you can't collect for anymore, at least not affordably. So that kind of limits what we can collect if you're on a budget. But there are some ways that I get around that because I am a retro video gamer at heart. I grew up with retro video games. I started out collecting retro video games, and I'm going to continue collecting retro video games. And it's expensive, but there are ways that I get around that. So one of the questions that new collectors tend to ask is like, where do I start? And that's such a hard question to answer because what do you love? What interests you? I remember when I was younger, I played the Sonic Mega Collection and the Sonic Gems Collection, and I was introduced to the Sega Saturn through that, and I was fascinated with the Saturn, and I wanted to collect for the Saturn, so I went out and I collected the Saturn. So really, it's what do you love? And there's also the factor of what can you afford? But I think a great place to start out is last generation games. This has been going on, for decades now, where the previous generation games go to an all-time low. When the new stuff comes out, it was like that with the GameCube. GameStop was clearancing all their GameCube games, and same thing with the Wii U and the 360 and PS3. The PS3 for the longest time was dirt cheap. Now it's starting to rise up, and that tends to happen. So right now, it's a great time to collect PlayStation 4 and Xbox One games. A great time. I got this game for like $5. I got this game for under 10. Granted, it's cyberpunk, but Dragon Quest XI, a wonderful RPG. Got this for under $10. There are so many great games from last generation that are dirt cheap now, and just like all the generations before it, they're gonna be dirt cheap now, and you're gonna be like, wow, why do I want to bother with that? There's no collectability, it's not interesting. Well, 5-10 years down the line, these games that are $5-10 now are gonna rise up in price. They'll be $20, $30, $40 plus in 5-10 years. And it's a cycle that repeats itself. So absolutely do not forget about previous generation games. And another thing too is you can create subsets of collecting. An example would be collecting different variations of cover art. Like I got Final Fantasy 15, the Day 1 edition. There's another edition that is not the Day 1, just the regular, and then you got Royal here, which is granted a newer game, but it has this beautiful cover art by Yoshitaka Amano, and just collecting just variations of cover art, creating little subsets of collecting is a great thing to do, and especially with last generation consoles, it's a very affordable way to do it as well. You can get like Xbox 360 games for dirt cheap still. I think they've probably reached rock bottom. I don't think they're going to get any lower than this. So Xbox 360, it's a great time to collect. PS3 already starting to rise up, but it's still affordable. This is a sealed copy of Final Fantasy 13-2 that I got for, I think, under $20. I love the Final Fantasy series. That's another thing. Create a subset of series. If you like Final Fantasy, collect all the Final Fantasy games. You know, it sounds simple in concept, but sometimes we just kind of think over those things. So I've always been a collector who looks for the best deal. I don't like to pay premiums. I don't like to play even market. I like to pay under what they're worth. And that's hard. That could be hard to do, especially with the retro games. And this is where a big chunk of my kind of collecting tips come in. So I've created subsets of collections that I look for when I collect. And one of those is I like to collect games that are beat up. I like bad condition games. An example here is Rayman 2. This is probably the worst copy of Rayman 2 on the N64 you will ever see. But it's complete in box, and I got it for, I think, a total of $3 or $4. Granted, this was many years back, but even for the time, that was really, really cheap. And if you like complete in box games, which I do, and I completely understand why you would, look for complete in box games that have seen better days, that are completely torn up, that the manuals are gross, that are maybe missing an insert or two, but they have, maybe all you need is the box and the manual. That's the kind of collecting I do. I as long as it has the box and the manual, I am totally fine. That's fine with me. But I usually look for the games that are in bad condition. Another example, right here, I have Super Mario Land on the Nintendo Game Boy. This copy is very beat up. Japanese games are known to be in very good condition because they kept better condition, or kept better care of their games back then. They didn't throw anything out. So, especially 5-10 years back, when you found a bad condition Japanese games, not only were Japanese games cheaper, but if you found a bad condition Japanese game, they go for a dime a dozen. I think I paid under $5 for this 5 or 10 years ago, and it goes for a lot more now. So I love bad condition games. It doesn't bother me. If anything, it shows me that they were played, that they were loved, and they have a story behind them, which is really, really wonderful, in my opinion. Another thing you can do is maybe just collecting the manuals, the game and the manual. When it comes to handheld games, I don't collect complete in box. I will if I find a good deal, but I don't restrict myself to that, because when you restrict yourself to certain collecting standards, it can be fine, but if you restrict yourself to complete in box, then you're restricting yourself from experiencing those games. You know, especially with handhelds, those games complete in box fetch a very, very pretty penny. And if I told myself I wasn't going to play Dragon Warrior 3 until I got a complete in box copy, well, $200-300 later, you know, and 2 decades later, oh, I'll finally get to experience it when I'm 40-50 years old. So with handhelds, I'm usually fine with collecting cartridge only, but I really do like to get the manuals when I can. So I like to collect handhelds with the manual. So here I have Dragon Warrior 3 with the manual I got, and usually it doesn't add that much more, especially if you buy them together, because most collectors don't look for just the game and the manual. They at least want the game manual in box. And so ever since I was a kid, I've collected the games and the manuals. This is a whole little bag of just manuals. I'm ashamed to admit that when I was younger, I would get the games and I would throw the box away. But I would always keep the manual, which even to this day, I still don't completely understand why I did that. Although I do remember very fondly going back and looking through the manuals during my free time when I was younger. Here's Pokemon Emerald. God, if only I kept that box. Like, this is completely worn because I would read this manual over and over as a kid. Even if I knew all the information, you know, I would just look at the pictures and just reread because I loved the game so much. And I think that's partly why I'm totally fine with just collecting the games and the manual. I have Sonic Advance here, game and the manual. I have no desire to go out and pay $50, $60+ to get the box. And I guess that's maybe a recent discovery. You know, I used to be very much into collecting complete in box, but then I found out that I wasn't experiencing these games that I wanted to experience. And so I decided to just kind of ditch that and collect the games and maybe the manuals for the handhelds. So another thing that I love to collect is I like to collect rental copies of games. Here I have a couple of rental copies. So this is Silkworm on the NES, and this is a pretty spendy NES game. It's just the box and the manual, but the rental copy, it's the original box. They just cut it up and they put it in these cases. And you know, some collectors may be like, oh my goodness, that's horrible, but I love this. Not only does it make actually kind of a cool display case, you know, and much easier to put on shelves, but this is unique. And it's something that you don't see completely often, and this game has a story. I mean, think of how many kids back in the 80s rented this game from, gosh, where was this? From a Blockbuster Video. Yeah, I mean, this has probably gone through so many kids' hands, and I think that is so cool and so unique. And it gives you access to maybe games with boxes or complete in box at a much discounted price, and that's great. That's really wonderful because most collectors want pristine condition things. These are not pristine. These are horrible condition. I mean, the boxes are cut up. Here's Gauntlet 2. Same deal. This one actually has the manual in it, and it has some writing on the manual. Some kid back in the 80s wrote some codes on the back of this. I mean, that is so cool, and to me is worth more than a copy that is in pristine condition. I mean, I love this kind of stuff, and it has little instructions right here that the I'm assuming the rental company made and posted on the back of that box. Like, it's so unique and so cool. Illusion of Gaia, same deal. Horrible condition. But I got the manual and I got the box for Illusion of Gaia for under $30. I mean, it's super cool. So another subset too is maybe collecting games that are unique, you know, like rental copies. And one of my favorite things in my collection is this copy of Ghouls and Ghosts. And the reason why I love this so much is some kid had this copy, they had the cartridge, and they found a magazine clipping, and looks like they found just a normal piece of computer paper, and they wrote down codes for the game, and they taped it on the back of this box, and they taped the magazine clipping with a hint on how to get invincibility on the back of the box, and it looks like a little custom-made side label right here. Maybe it was a rental copy too, I'm not sure. This is so cool, and it's one of the most unique items in my collection, and I love this. I love this so much because there's so much more I can say about a game like this than a complete in-box copy of Ghouls and Ghosts that's pristine. I mean, what is there to say about that? Oh, it's in such great condition. Well, this, okay, well, the kid did this. He cut out some magazine clippings, taped it on the back, and he loved this game to death so much to the point where he wanted to do this. I mean, that is so cool to me. So creating little subsets like that, you know, finding the worst condition copy or finding the most unique condition copy, or maybe just collecting the game and the manual. Now, another thing that you can do is you can, I would say, go garage sailing and just buy whatever you see very cheaply, but you don't run across many games at garage sales nowadays. But maybe buying cheaper games and trading them into game stores. So I've collected for many years. I've had a lot of games in my collection that I don't care about. But even though I don't care about them, they're not worth much, you know. I consider selling on eBay. If I were to sell a game on eBay, it needs to be worth more than $20, $30 for it to be worth my time. If they're worth under that, then I'm like, it's not really worth it. What do I do with those? Trade them in. Go to your local game store, trade them in. You might get more than what you think, and then you can use that trade credit to get something that you really, really want. Like, this is Ys, Wanderers from Ys 3. It's a very, very, very nice condition copy of this game. It's complete in box. And they wanted $80 for this. Now, game stores, they tend to charge market price or a premium. But if you have trade credit from a bunch of games that you don't care about, that you wouldn't be able to sell anyway, it suddenly makes that premium a lot more tolerable. I had no problem spending the $80 premium or $80 trade credit that I got from selling sports games and just some cheap games that I didn't care about to get a game that I really wanted, complete in box. And I guess by restricting yourself from maybe collecting really nice complete box copies or something like that, when you finally do get a complete in box copy that's really nice, such as this is my only complete in box Super Nintendo game that's like genuinely nice. It makes it so much more special when you get that. So I mean, maybe create a restriction where you don't go out and look for complete in box games. You know, and then when you finally do get the chance to get a complete in-box game, it makes it so much more meaningful and so much more exciting too. You know, I've been saying, you know, if you have so much money and you just buy and buy and buy, there's no restrictions, there's no problem, suddenly these video games just become another commodity, not worth anything. You get numb to the excitement that you would feel if there were restrictions and you weren't able to get as many games at once. And I think creating a sort of restriction is a very healthy thing. So I mean, you know, if you wanted to create the restriction where you only collect complete in box games, then by all means, that's wonderful. If you're fine with maybe not experiencing all these games at once. Maybe you want that. Maybe you want to only experience the game when you finally get it complete in box. I am like that with my Sega Saturn games. I don't like to emulate. I only play on original hardware. So by doing that, I'm restricting myself from playing Panzer Dragoon Saga on the Saturn. But when or if I finally do get that game, then that'll make that moment so much more special to me. So, you know, there are some ideas, some rough ideas on maybe how to collect and how I collect video games in today's current market, you know, especially with a limited budget. But I hope I gave you some sort of ideas. And, you know, I know this video is a little all over the place, but, well, that's the 32-bit musician for you. But how do you guys collect? You know, do you have any sort of subsets of collecting that you follow? Any rules, any restrictions? Let me know in the comments below. I'd really love to find that out because I think it's so interesting to see how different people collect and how it differs from one person to another. But thank you so much, guys, for watching. I hope you have a wonderful new year. I'll see you soon. Have a good one.